Hello, hello, beautiful people. How are you today? I hope you can hear me fine and everything's good. Let me know in the chat if there's any issues here. And today we'll be taking a look at a few new things. We'll be taking a look, let me bring up the workflows for you so you can see. We'll be taking a look at this workflow here on the left side of the screen, where we'll be using some random noise in order to enhance our generations. And this was something that came to my mind while I was chatting with one of you viewers, and it was telling me that he was having issues in generating interesting images like he was used to with Midjourney. And I thought about what you would normally do in programs such as Houdini or any other simulation apps. And I thought, well, why not use random noise in order to do some perturbing in a way of the underlying latent and or in this case the conditioning, and have some more interesting results like that. And then we'll be taking a look at where are things with my workflow for relighting and preserving details, but in particular with people. That's because my workflow that I've shared this week and in previous weeks as well had troubles with people, of course. It was mainly aimed at product because of that, and we were having some issues with relighting for people, but we are close to solving that, at least in my testing. I need a bit more testing for that, but I will show you where we are at today. And then we'll be taking a look at a fun new node, which is called AnyNode. And AnyNode is literally the anything node. It's not here in this workflow area because I have installed it in a different ComfUI instance because it's highly experimental and I don't want it to break anything. And so we will talk about that a bit later. But because I have to shut down this instance and get another one running, the experimental one running. And it's a fun new node because, and I will talk about that later as well, but what it does is it uses an LLM, a large language model, same as ChatGPT, for example. It actually can use ChatGPT in order to program any node, literally any node. It's basically it's based on the prompt that you give it, and what it does is it tries to write a Python code that can run what you're asking it to do. So in case we are missing a node, for example, and there's no node for what we want to do, we could ask any node to create a node that does that. And I've talked to the dev yesterday and today, and I'm actually quite happy because he implemented one of my requests, but we'll talk about that later in detail. He implemented one of my requests in like a couple of hours, so that was great. And it's still, I think it's the third or fourth day since it came out, so the dev says it's in beta. I would say it's more in alpha than in beta, but it's a wonderful tiny node that can do anything. So, but let's start with the easiest thing to understand. Okay, so this is, let me bypass this group so that this one is not active right now. This one, we'll take care of that later. This is a tiny little workflow that doesn't do much right now, but what it does, it's basically using an IP adapter for a source based on style. It's a style transfer IP adapter. And then we have the usual core here. We got a little checkpoint, some clip testing code for negative and positive. Let me actually add not safe for work because we all know what happens if I don't. And we have a very simple prompt. We are using an SDXL model. We have Etherverse XL here, but it works well with 1.5 as well. And what it does is usually you would just generate an image based on an empty latent image, and that would be it. But one viewer was telling me that he was having troubles in generating interesting composition and interesting results with Stable Diffusion, whereas with Midjourney it's sort of a it's sort of a basic feature, just getting nice and interesting and cool results. Whereas with Stable Diffusion you have to sweat a bit more, I guess. And what I thought about that would be that maybe it was because the starting point of the generation wasn't interesting enough. Adding an empty latent image, you are basically adding randomness to the generation, but you are not able to control it in any way. So I thought, what's the best way to control something? Well, it turns out it's ControlNet. It's not that hard once you think about it in those terms. But we want to control the generation in a way that is random. And so I thought about my Houdini days, and I've never been much of an expert in Houdini or in other simulation softwares, but I have a bit of an understanding. So the first thing that I learned about Houdini and how to make things interesting in Houdini, as far as shapes are concerned, as far as kind of basic shapes and forms that you want to have, is that adding a random noise map would solve basically all of your issues. And that's because if you have a sphere and then you influence it by using Voronoi or Perlin, for example, which are random noise maps, actually random noise textures, but yeah, they can be used as maps as well, you get some nice and interesting shapes out of your sphere, which is not a sphere anymore. It's more like a blob, and it's completely random how it turns out. So random is interesting in generating stuff. And shout out to Entagma, the channel Entagma. They don't know me, but I know them, and they are a great resource for anything Houdini related. And so what I wanted to do was create a very quick group that could use this kind of random noise in order to influence the conditioning through a ControlNet depth. And turns out we have the nodes for that. So we have a Perlin power fractal node, we have a Voronoi noise filter node, we have all those kind of nodes that generate these kind of interesting shapes in black and white. And well, what is black and white if not a depth map? Or at least what is an image in black and white if not something that can be used as a depth map? So this group basically blends these two random noises together and makes them interesting for the conditioning. And this is the resulting blended image between the Perlin and the Voronoi. This is based on difference between the two noises, known as 0.5 blend factor, but you can tinker around with that and find your own kind of blend that you like. And then it's fed into an apply ControlNet node that is been set to a depth model, and we don't need any preprocessors because there is really no depth to extract from here. It's already a kind of a depth map. It's in black and white, and the ControlNet will understand that the white stuff is more towards us, the viewer, whereas the black stuff is more far off in the distance. Does this make sense to you, chat? You're not awfully talkative today, are you, chat? But yeah, basically, this would be the result once you get that conditioning going. And if we disable this group, let me check if I can do that this way. Bypass group, no, of course it doesn't, because that's my fault for always trying to... Hello, Max. How are you today? I'm gonna cancel, I'm gonna remove this group so that I can bypass this one. I'm gonna fix that later once I release the workflow to all of you. And I'm gonna bypass this group and I'm gonna go ahead and generate and show you what this means. So you can see how this is a very basic result for my query, which is a still life editorial close-up photo of flowers. Yes, it is a still life editorial close-up photo of flowers, but I don't want this kind of picture. I want more of a dreamy kind of pictures. I want this super close-up kind of thing that is more abstract than real. And that's why I'm asking for an editorial picture, because I'm used to fashion editorials having still life pictures that are far more interesting than this one. This is boring. This is your usual stable diffusion basic boring picture that you generate. Whereas if you turn the noise group back on, and let's hit generate again, but with a different seed, otherwise you will get the same thing. Well, actually you wouldn't, because this is randomly generated every single time, so we can keep the same seed without issues. Let's see what happens. It's a bit slower because, of course, ControlNet with SDXL, it's going to take a while. There you go. You got this explosion of flowers. The conditioning is, and the ControlNet is trying to make sense of what's happening in this mask over here, in this image that is acting as a mask. So let's see at different strengths what it means to us. Let's bring it all the way down to 0.2, for example, and launch this. Hello, XDev. How are you? Yeah, it's pretty nice, isn't it? It's it is nice, and sorry, I'm turning off notifications because otherwise you would keep hearing ding ding ding. And there we go. And okay, so 0.2, it's still acting a bit, but it's not influencing as much. We still have a vase, we still have a table of sorts, but there isn't this kind of explosion towards the viewer. There isn't this kind of depth to it. Let's bring it all the way up to 1, which is a bad idea because we are working with SDXL, and we know that with SDXL ControlNets shouldn't be turned all the way up to 1 because they don't work quite well. And let's see what happened. There we go, a big explosion towards the viewer. Now that's pretty good, isn't it? So we can modulate how the depth is being taken into consideration in the final result. And without actually changing the prompt, we can get very different results, very cool results at that. And I keep thinking of these kind of solutions because the more I am into this space and the more I am testing stuff, the more the less I prompt, the more I go away from prompting, the more I try not to prompt. Because prompting, at least with SD 1.5, but even with SDXL, it's not an exact science. In order to prompt well, like, you have to understand what the model understands, and I find it difficult because it's, well, with SD 1.5 it's the most challenging because you all know that the prompt salads you get with 1.5 are nowhere nearly intelligible like you normally would where you're describing something. But even with that SDXL, you kind of have to understand what you are asking for. Whereas if you are just resorting to basic prompts, then you can influence the results in other ways. It's still conditioning. And that's the kind of thing that I was thinking about yesterday when I thought about this, is that this is still conditioning, but it's another form of conditioning. I used to paint white lines with a soft brush in Photoshop to feed a tapped control net for controlling composition. Similar results for light can be achieved using similar black and white gradients in image to image with denoise equals 1. With realistic indoor scenes, the model often generates windows to rationally the light source even with no window in the prompt. Yes, it's basically the same. But so if you want to have more control, of course, you can draw them yourselves. But once you're starting to get into the automating stuff, kind of a mental approach, like I am developing workflows for a ton of different people out there. And if it's one client, then yes, of course, I can resort to not actually automate everything unless they want to automate everything. And I know the use case that we'll end up using. But if I release a workflow in the wild, I would rather find a way to automate everything, even the depth source. So if you're working for yourself, if you want to find a solution for yourself and you already know what you're ending up doing, then yes, Alu, you can do it like that and just paint your own depth maps. Otherwise, I find that noise and random noise like Voronoi and Perlin are great for achieving kind of the same result. Let's see some questions. Hi, do you know how to just compose image to background without background changing? Thank you for your work. You are amazing. Thank you. Okay, so I think you're referring to my previous workflow for relighting and preserving details and color matching, the one from Monday. Well, yes, there I know of a way, but the thing is, you're not going to be happy about it. So there are a few ways to do that, and the quickest way to do that would be in Photoshop. I am not one for trying to find a solution in ComfUI if I know that that solution is not scalable, and it's much easier to do that somewhere else. But if you wanted to do that inside of ComfUI, there is a big caveat, which is Latin for how do you say that in English? For like you have to know that there's this big roadblock ahead of you, which is you can either bypass or not. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the English word. Which is, do the original image and the background you want to compose on have the same perspective? If they don't have the same point of view and the same perspective, you cannot do that. There is no automatic perspective alignment node out there. I don't think there can be, because I don't think we have the resources to do that. Maybe in Photoshop, but I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that like HDR you can align stuff automatically, but they are kind of in the same position already, and you're overlaying stuff that has the kind of the same lines, so it understand what it kind of needs to do. But with two different things, an object and a background, there is no alignment possible, unless you have the same perspective. If you do, what you could do is just segment out the original subject and like remove the background and then align with XY positioning. I am actually developing a workflow right now for a client that does that with minimal inputs from the user, but since there's no drag and drop node, there is no drag and drop rescale node, you have to input XY positions and rescaling yourself through a transform node. Okay. And I'm sorry, I can't help much more, but that's the state of things right now inside of ComfUI. So that's why I said that it's the only thing that I haven't implemented for that workflow, because we can't really do much about it. We can either do this if we have the same perspective and it's a very easy solution to implement, or it's a lot easier anyway to just do it in Photoshop. And if they don't have the same perspective, there's no solution to it. If they don't have the same perspective and you can align them, you have solved a very big issue, and I'm very interested in how you did it. Okay, let's see. Cool. My experience too that prompts aren't so important if you improve the results with additional noise or gradients. Yeah, exactly. Like yesterday, I was teaching another client of mine. I've been doing lessons, one-on-one lessons, and we were taking a look at a way to, let's say, for example, change a carpet in a render scene. And we built a workflow from scratch that doesn't involve any actual prompting. You don't need prompting. You don't need to specify anything in the actual positive prompt or negative prompt. And that's because you are adding so much stuff around it that it doesn't even make sense to prompt something. Like everything else is being taken care of either by an IP adapter or a control net or whatever. Multiple segment anything nodes, then a blend composite image node into a depth map, render, then image to image. That I think, Timbershield, are you referring to the question by Jehor? Yeah, if like, but that only works if the two subject and background have the same perspective. Otherwise, it won't work. It won't ever work because they would look like it would look like it's copy pasted badly in Photoshop. So yeah, like if any of you ever comes up with a solution to the perspective problem, come to me and I will bask in your glory and I will sing your songs. But I haven't found a solution to that. So if you do, that's great. That would be really great. Okay. All right. So that was it for the depth kind of thing. There's a lot of different noises out there. But well, they are all kind of the same once you blended them all together. Like you can see that the Voronoi shapes are more like they're stronger. They have angles, whereas the Perlin ones are these blobs here. But let's say you wanted to have the Voronoi come in a bit more strong rather than have more Perlin. Let's up the blend factor, and then you have more straight lines. Let's see what happens in the generation. Like blending 2 or 3 different random noises is usually enough to create interesting things. Yeah, you have more separation now between the elements. The separation between the different flowers is sharper now because the Voronoi influences the resulting depth much more. Let's go all the way to 1. Let's see what happens. Hello, Luma. I think that maybe it needs to implement a way to read and match the focal length. That's what we do while working with images on 3D. Yes. So there you go. Now you have the Voronoi coming out of the depth map at maximum value, and now you don't have the usual shape of the petals anymore. You have this very angled shape, which is interesting. It all depends on what you want to do. And we're still at 1 strength. If we would go way down to say 0.6 and Q again. Let's see what happens. Okay, Luma, yep. Yeah, the rescaling based on focal length. Yes, but it's also a matter of angles. Like people come to me with a frontal picture, a front view of the subject and a 45 degrees picture of the background and ask how they can implement one on top of the other. And I say to that, how would you do that even in Photoshop? Like there's no way to make it look good. I mean, you could add some perspective alignment by hand inside of Photoshop, but it would still look kind of terrible. The right way to do it would be to shoot the background plate and the subject in a way that, you know, works well. There's only so much you can do in post. What's the advantage of these noisy images in comparison to all these existing tools like perturbed differential diffusion, etc.? Okay, so let me grab a Coke first because I am really thirsty. there we go again. Okay. Perturbed attention guidance, PAG, which is a very cool sounding name, or acronym, I would say. So PAG, well, both of them influence the model, whereas here we are influencing the conditioning. We have two main ways of influencing the resulting generation, which, well, there's three, but the third one is for people who are really lost in the sauce. And it's by influencing the model or influencing the conditioning. If you are influencing the model, you are influencing how the model behaves at, like, let's think of this as a lasagna of sorts, and the model is here, the conditioning is here, and the latent is somewhere. And if you are influencing the model, you are influencing the kind of base layer of the lasagna. If you are influencing the conditioning, you are influencing like an intermediate layer. And I find that I have the most trouble when I'm trying to influence the models, because it works at such a deep level that I don't have a clear understanding of what's going on. Whereas with conditioning, I have a clear understanding of what's going on. And in what I do, having a clear understanding of what's going on is very, very important. And that's because what I do is, well, apart from a real job, which is being a fashion photographer, what I started doing since last year is developing workflows for clients or doing consulting. And in order to do that, I have to have a very clear understanding of what I'm proposing to clients. Whereas with PAG and differential diffusion, yeah, I get what's happening, but through kind of a reverse engineering kind of process, rather than oh yeah, it's generating these kind of flowers because they are being affected by a Voronoi. That's a lot easier to understand in my case. Maybe it's different for you, but for me, it's a lot easier to understand conditioning rather than model influencing. That's very cool. How do you sell those processes to your clients? Do you wrap them with some front end? Okay, so I'm not a developer. I am a fashion photographer. Being a fashion photographer, I am quite stupid. Not saying that all fashion photographers are quite stupid, but I mean, we are not devs. And so I can't code for the life of me. Like, if my life depended on actually coding something, I would maybe get away with the hello world, maybe, depending on the language. And it would have to be a really easy language. So I develop what's basically the back end. And the back end in this case is the workflow. If the client wants a front end of sorts, they have two options. Either ask me to create a stable swarm front end. If you don't know what stable swarm is another UI for stable diffusion, but the way it works, it has a web UI interface that is modular like Automatic 1111, but in the background there is an instance of conf UI running. So I can just drop my workflow in the background and have a easy-ish to understand interface in the front. So the client or the user has to only face the actual web UI. I mean, yes, conf UI can be a front end itself. The only thing that matters to me is that one knows what they are doing once they open my workflow in conf UI. And well, I am talking to people who watch lives, so you are not exactly those kind of people, but I have a lot of viewers who comment on my videos asking for stuff that is covered in the video or it's explained in the notes. So yeah, the average viewer or the average user doesn't really reads notes or sits through a whole video that should and could explain those things to them. So when I think about end users, I think about these kind of people, not you guys sticking out in the chat for I don't know, even know how long, sometimes 2 hours. So yeah, the other way of doing that, if the client doesn't want a stable Swarm UI, they can just get a front-end developer, and since Conf UI is accessible through APIs, they can just script their own front-end. But I don't provide front-ends. What are I feeling comfy? Yeah, we are. Think about how the workflows looks like just Python code. Yes, it is, and that's why someone better than I am at developing front end can actually just take the JSON and use it through APIs, or just use it as a backend and then develop a front end. But it's, to me and to most users out there and most clients out there, this is an unreadable mess. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if automatic 1111 is too scary for users. Automatic 1111 is quite similar to other UIs out there, whereas Conf UI is an absolute mess. Like, I love Conf UI. I don't use anything but Conf UI basically, but that's just because it's like I'm very used to node programming. And that's because I come from Blender. I come from, like, in my experimentations, I mean, I come from Blender, I come from Houdini, and all those softwares are node based, so it's kind of easy. Okay, so any more questions about this one? This one is kind of easy. You can just implement, like, something that I find throughout all my videos is that some of you think that workflows are this monolithic entity that should not be disturbed, that should not be it's like its form, it's fixed in time and space, it cannot be altered, whereas it's really not. Like, you can add stuff. I know this is maybe not news to you chatters, because you are at a more advanced level than the usual viewer, but you can just add stuff. Like, I provide bare bones workflows precisely because of that. I don't want I myself don't want to have any bloated workflow when I download stuff, because then I don't know what's optional and what's needed anymore, unless I spend like 3 hours trying to untangling someone else's spaghetti code. And yeah, that if you want to do like an image to image workflow here, you just swap the empty latent image for a load image node and a VAE encode node. If you want to do some relighting, you just copy and paste the IC light relighting thing and plug it here. That's easy. That's what we want to do. But yeah, okay. So let's close this chapter for now, and let's maybe get back to it later if some of you want to see more of it. And let's talk about relighting people. A quick pause while I drink some water, and after some water, some Coke. Thank you for your patience. You want to have some ASMR? There you go, you're welcome, chat. Don't ever say I don't spoil you. Okay, so where are we at with relighting people? Hello, Peter. How are you? So right now, the product relighting, preserving detail, color matching, whatever workflow was mainly usable for products, which is honestly, I would think that is the main use case for it, at least a commercial use case for it, without going into deep about what can be used as like at a commercial license, or non-commercial license in the space. But yeah, I think that like the game-changing kind of aspect of that workflow was that most of the stuff that is being sold in the worldwide world and in the World Wide Web is product. It's not people. And well, sometimes there's product on people, but not all time. And relighting for product is great. And I've talked to a few still life photographers and e-commerce photographers, because you don't need, like, if relighting and detail preservation and color matching are achieved, then you don't need to take like perfect shots anymore. Or even if you need to take perfect shots, you don't have to take as many shots anymore, because you can just relight, swap the background, create social pictures or advertising pictures just like that, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. Like, well, pretty amazing and pretty scary. Remember, I'm a photographer as well. But yeah, relighting people, it is much less important. But since a lot of you asked for that, and I am interested in that as well, I've been trying to solve that. Here we have a woman. Oh, let me check the chat. Good, thank you for your work. Happy to watch the stream for the first time. Thank you. I don't do much streaming. I can only stream when I don't have anything else to do. And I have some new things that I want to show you. But so it's not like a thing I do every week at the same time, like my videos. But I do it every once in a while when I feel like it. But it's your chance to actually ask questions and get some more in-depth knowledge about what I do. And Duma said, I think that we include people when we want to sell an illusion of a world. Yes. But like the thing with selling people is that we are trying to achieve that in two different ways. Yes, relighting an e-commerce picture can be useful. And you are kind of solving the issue that by using a diffusion model, you are altering the details. If you can preserve details, then that's great. And you have solved that issue. But we are also trying to solve that, which is the more interesting solution, with like the alphing anyone route, or the how do you call that? Like the zero shot route of achieving e-commerce ready pictures by starting from a reference image. And so, whereas for e-commerces using people, that is the most interesting thing, and relighting is not. For product is the opposite. You don't care about starting from a product picture. Product pictures are cheap. Well, when you think about it in comparison to product picture with people. What's not cheap is producing a ton of images that are on dedicated sets or on location. For socials, for advertising, for banners, for whatever. And yeah, and product relighting solves that in a way. But yeah, let's get back to our woman that is being astonished by a flying mushroom, and we will see that mushroom later because that's the icon of the any node. Of course, when I'm generating stuff and I have a video coming out or I have a live soon, I generate thumbnails. It's a lot easier than actually just trying to do any other kind of form of thumbnails. And so that's why you see it in such a resolution. Also, well, before we go into the relighting, I just wanted to say one thing. I keep hearing people asking me how I can use Stable Diffusion 1.5 when the optimal resolution is so low. Well, that's the thing about the optimal resolution. It's that it's optimal. It's not the required resolution. I don't care about optimal. Like if I can do it at 1920 by 1080, and have no issues, then why should I stick with 512 by 512? Then just because it's the optimal resolution? I don't understand. And so yeah, like this being, like IC Light being a SD 1.5 model only is not a deal breaker for me. Like it shouldn't be for you either. You can use SDXL for upscaling then, or you can just save the image, encode it, and start again with a different model. You can do that. It's like there's no model police out there. And yeah, so we're starting from this. We wanted to have the light coming from the fungus, from the mushroom, and we wanted to have some relighting. And now I want to have a very different relighting condition, and I just want to leave it like that. And just because I wanted to show you how where we are with preserving details. Let's start with this, then we do some more like different lighting conditions and see where it takes us. So this is the lighting mask. This is the relit picture. Let me open that up for you a bit. As you can see, the details are kind of different. You can't quite appreciate it if it's not a product shot, because in product we have words and we have textures, whereas in this one we don't have much of it. But like if you take a look maybe at the underneath of the mushroom, you might see some stuff that is not quite there, that should have been there. So what we want to do is use frequency separation technique, right? And the issue with frequency separation technique in Stable Diffusion, in Conf UI at least, is that we are missing stuff. And the stuff that we're missing is not hard to code. The thing is, no one coded it for us, so it's not there. And that will bring us to any node later. But let's see what we have now. What we have, or at least what we don't have, is two tools. One of each of the two different ways to use frequency separation technique, which hinders us in using any one of the two. There's two ways of using frequency separation technique. One that uses apply image over the V channel of an HSV, like it's like RGB, but it's HSV. And it's basically applying the fine details image on top of a blurry V channel image. And we don't have a way to apply image like in Photoshop, which is an action you can do. So that's a no-go. And the other way is doing basically this, but by subtracting, and here we are not subtracting, but we are adding, and so we are adding the inverse in order to get the subtraction. Like you invert and then you add, it's like you're subtract. Can you make it? Okay. And it's like minus times plus equals minus. And we are also using this kind of addition as well for getting the low frequency layer on and the high frequency layers together. But that's usually done by using a layer blending fusion mode, which is linear light, but we don't have linear light. We have overlay, we have soft light, but we don't have linear and hard light. Now, linear light, hard light, overlay, multiply, whatever, are math functions. They're not even algorithms, they're just math functions. So someone out there, if you're there, please listen to me, could write a node that does linear light blending, and then this would be solved. But while we are waiting for that to happen, that's because I'm not a coder, so I can't do it, we are resorting to this kind of add blending mode function, which is an approximation of what linear light does. And that's why the results are kind of scuffed sometimes. But yeah, what we want to do I'm sorry, I don't speak Korean. Let's see what that is. I mean, I can understand that that's Korean, but I don't know what that means. Okay, I'm gonna look up and translate. Translate.google.com. And that's Korean. Hello. Oh, that was easy. Annyeonghaseyo. I hope that was fine. And so what we want to do is two things. What we want So what we want to do is use the low frequency layer from the starting image, from the relit image, and use the high frequency layer for the subject parts of the original image on top of the non-subject parts of the relit image. And that's kind of easily done. Or we could just use the high frequency layer of the starting image if we don't have details from the relit image that we care about. And where we're at right now is this. This is the relit picture without details. This is the relit picture with detail. Let me zoom in a bit. Can you see the difference? It's mostly on the mushroom, but it's on the person as well. Should I go slower? So with this kind of like not harsh lighting in both conditions, starting image and relit image, we are there. We solved the issue. The thing is, I'm not releasing Wokrflow for this kind of conditions only. We have to test for harsh lighting conditions as well. So let's go again and do a different light mask. Okay, let's open in some editor. Let's do some lighting from here and from here. We're gonna, let me duplicate this clip text and code node. I was being lazy and using an empty one for positive and negative, but right now we have to use a negative one as well. So I'm gonna go with strip neon lights, and I'm gonna up the remap mask range to 0.75 or 76. That's fine. And let's see what happens. Oh, sorry. Now it's gonna be bad. Let's do that again. I'm gonna also explain why it's gonna be bad. This is something that sometimes happens to people, and then people ask me, why do I get this? Why, oh why? I followed your workflow from start to finish and I'm getting this thing here. Well, have you followed the workflow or have you listened to me? Because if you did, you would know that this is not completely automated if you're using a mask from the preview bridge image node. Once you are using a mask from the open in mask editor, every single time you get a new generation inside of the preview bridge node, the mask goes away. So you have to draw a new mask every single time. So in this case, this group was disabled, and when I re-enabled it, the generation started anew. It didn't have any memory of it. And that's because I restarted ConfUI right before going live, and I still hadn't used it. So the mask that I had so carefully drawn in the mask editor went away. There we go. Now we have this. Well, this is very awful lighting, but it kind of illustrates our point. So let's go and check it out. Okay, here's the difference. We can see that it's holding up quite well. The details are still there, and the overall lighting is being preserved. So that's kind of good. But where is it failing us? It's in a very tiny detail that you might not see right now, but hello Pranav, how are you? It's right here. Since this is a high contrast zone area of the picture, it kind of hooked, like it kind of latched onto those details, and it cannot let these details go. And that's a feature, that's not a bug. That's because that's how the high frequency layer works. So that's why you get the best results out of this if you are starting from a well diffused image. Like if you're starting from an image that has some very nice even lighting with some diffuse lighting, diffuse like soft shadows, soft lights, then you get nice results. If you're starting from harsh lighting conditions, then you cannot get, no matter how hard you try, good results if you are also trying to preserve details. So for products, that's easy. You just shoot them with some soft lighting, and that's it. But with some starting image, there's just no way around it. Let's try something else again, and then we move on to color matching for subjects, which is terrible, but we'll get back to that later. Let's actually bring in a different image. Downloads. Let's bring this one in. So this is a very cropped picture of one of my past thumbnails. This was from the SD3 video, I think. And do I have the sizing somewhere else? No, let's Q prompt. Again, we're gonna have the error in the IC light, and that's because we don't have a mask here. So what we can do is just cancel the generation and add a mask over here. We're gonna have some very harsh lighting coming from here. And hit Q prompt. Amazing stuff, man. I wonder what will be the future of Relight for Photoshop. DaVinci Resolve has one, but Comfy is still way powerful, but no video. Well, actually, there is video. Like, if you export frame by frame and then you do relighting frame by frame, you can do that. It's at the end of my previous video. You can theoretically do that. I don't do that because I am not great at animating, but you can definitely do that. At least on a theoretical level. Okay. There we go. Here we have some issues. Okay, so we preserve details on the skin, and that's great. But let's see what happens. Like, in the original image, you have some diffused, like over here, you have some diffused lighting on the nose. Let's leave the eyes out of it because the eyes are a mess in this generation. But let's focus on the nose, right? Let's focus here on the nose, like really close to the nose. In the original image, we have some kind of harsh lighting. Well, it's not that harsh, but there is still some harsh lighting. Let me bring up the original image here. Because the lighting is coming from the left, right? And so there's a high contrast zone here. Now the high frequency layer picks this up and eats it up and spits out a contrast based image, which is, let's see if you can see it here, which is this one. Can you see it? It's kind of hard to see, but it's over here. And there's no getting rid of that. I hope that you can see it. I can see it, but maybe you can't. But trust me, these are the eyes and this is the nose. And since that has been picked up, there's no way of unmasking that out of this. You could do that by hand, but it wouldn't be automatic anymore, right? So there is no way of relighting only from this side from the right side while losing that catch light on the nose. And that's why you always get that. Now multiply that for every single catch light you might get on a person's face and how you are used to seeing correct light on faces, whereas you are not on product. And you can see where this is going. You can see that it's a lot harder to make a passable image that looks good when you are relighting it and preserving details when you're talking about people rather than when you're talking about product. So this is the point that we are at right now with preserving details for people. Let's get rid of neon and generate again. I don't want to end this on these horrible eyes here. And not that I'm ending the stream, I mean ending this. What's up with the eyes? Come on. Okay, let's go again. Like you can see that even I see light in the original relit image kind of always holds these light from the side as well, because there's no way it can do a convincing relit image without taking care of this highlight that contours the face. And there we go. We got our details back. Like if you look at the skin texture, that's quite nice. So we are at this point. I don't know if I'm ready to release yet. We'll see about that. I'm gonna decide in the, well, either today or tomorrow. If I do, it's gonna be next week's video. Otherwise, it's gonna be pushed 1 week more. But you know, it all depends on whether or not I feel like this is enough. And then there's the color matching issue. So color matching for product is easy. Kind of sedation needed, but it's a lot easier than people. And that's because of the same reason I was telling you before. You are not used to seeing perfect products everywhere, whereas you're used to realize if a face looks correct or not. We are hardwired to, as you know, as humans, to recognize faces and see if there's anything wrong with that. And so, like, we're not hardwired to recognize product and see if there's something wrong with that. Right now, that I know of, there's only two ways of, well, only two basic ways of relighting, of color matching a relit image, like automatically, in something that can be used in a workflow that goes out to an unknown number of users. And that is by using the color match node or an image blending mode set on either color or hue. And these are the two options. This is the option for the, let me check which one is which. Q prompt. Okay, yeah. This is the color matching based solution. This is the color blending mode solution. Let's bring up the hue one. Every time I say hue, I have to re-record myself on video because I do like hue. And yeah. So, and hue, which should be the one of the two correct choices, is completely unusable because the lighting conditions are so different that you get these kind of artifacts. So yes, you could go way down, and this is not even one. I mean, if I go all the way up to one as a blending option, you're gonna see that it's horrible. Like it really is. There you go. And what you could do theoretically would be try and fix the blend percentage all the way down to 0.2, something like that. Something where you won't be able to see as much of this difference, but then the lighting changes completely. So, and I'm gonna get back to the question in a sec. What I think about this is the following. Maybe we are using and we are placing and I mean we as the everyone in the community, we are placing IC Light in the wrong spot of a workflow. We are placing it towards the end when it should be more towards the start. I haven't done any testing on it yet, but my guess would be that maybe we should try to find a way to relight an image, and that wouldn't be our last step. We need to then encode it and do some image-to-image passes in order to maybe do an instruct pix-to-pix pass with the original picture on top of the relight one and see what happens. I don't know. I haven't tested it yet. That's why I would like more time before releasing this. But there must be a way that is not this bad way of doing things that is never satisfactory. Okay, regarding lighting, would it make sense to think about a combination with frequency, IC light with a reduced influence, and a depth map? What do you mean reduced influence on IC light? I'm really interested in that because I think there's a common misconception on IC light, and I want to see if some of you have that misconception as well. I'm going to drink while you type out your answer. So I'm going to go ahead while I wait the answer and explain this. IC light, at least the K-sampler, cannot accept denoising values lower than 1. I mean, it can. Of course it can, but in the same sense that a text-to-image workflow can accept lower denoise values than 1. It's going to be bad. Let's see what I mean. There you go. Let's do 0.7. And I want to say this because today, like a couple of hours ago, I saw someone on Reddit asking why their workflow wasn't working. And in their workflow, they were using an empty latent image instead of a light mask that has been encoded. And I think that either we didn't explain it well enough, both the devs and that have published IC Lightworks and us that have built workflow on it, or most of us still don't understand how it works. IC Light works with denoising equals 1, because what you are encoding and what you're using as a latent is not the original image, is the light mask. The light mask can assume many forms. It can be drawn with the opening mask editor. It can be uploaded by the user as a black and white image. It can be drawn via a mathematical function. It can be whatever you want. It can be even a light map extracted from a background, but it is always the light mask that gets encoded as an image inside of latent. And that's why we have a VAE encode node here that passes the mask here, this being encoded is the mask, to the K-sampler. Yeah, Luma, that's the thing. Like, you wouldn't open Photoshop without knowing how it works and expect it to work. But most people open up a workflow and expect it to work without knowing what it does. And so how does it work? Like if it starts from a light mask as the source of the latent, how would it work? How would it know that we want the original image on top of it? Well, that's because we are using the original image, as conditioning in what I believe is an instruct pix to pix workflow, basically. This IC light conditioning node takes the subject as a latent and place it over here in the foreground input, and then transforms the conditioning based on the image, based on the latent of the image that it sees. Much in the same way of what's happening here. And that's why I'm talking about these two workflows together today, because it is the same thing. It is the same. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's the same principle behind it. You are using conditioning. You are not using an image-to-image process. You are using conditioning. You are using an image-to-image process in IC Light, but the image-to-image process is based on the light mask. It's not based on the original image. Do you all get that? Because that's quite a, like, once you understand that, you understand how IC Light works, and you understand a lot of different stuff and why it works that way, the way it does, and why conditioning is so important. So that's why we cannot really control maybe you should write a lot of explanatory text inside the workflow as others do. Yeah. I don't know how many more text I can fit inside of my workflows. There's like notes everywhere. Like there's not a big wall of text in the beginning. Maybe I should do that as well. Yeah, I could do that, I guess. If you throw light on an object, the light diminishes with the distance, and I have the feeling that IC Light throws light to all distances with the same strength. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay, so this relighting is, as far as I understand it, is an approximation of 3D lighting in a 2D environment. Okay, you don't have a 3D scene. You have a 2D scene. So sometimes it's kind of hard to understand what's going on. But if you look at this relit image, for example, it understands the concept of light paths and the fact that light follows the rule of the square of the inverse of the distance. I know that in Italian. I don't know how to translate it off the top, like live in English. Because here it's much stronger than on the cheekbones and on the nose and on the on here on the mouth. But what it doesn't properly understand always is the concept of where the light should be, where the light should start from. And that's because of a big limitation that we have, which is we can only paint the light mask inside of the borders of our image. Like if I wanted the light to be starting from here, for example, relative to this image, I can't do that. There is no image here. But I wanted to start from here over here, so the closest approximation of this point in space is here. And the thing is, it doesn't understand that I wanted to start from here, because like this general direction could be here, could be here, could be here, could be all the way there. And there's no way of knowing, right? So it is an approximation. What we can do, outpaint first, add the light, and then crop. Yes, you can do that. But then your subject would be at a very low resolution. Because this is 1024 by 1024. If I outpaint, let's say to another 1024 by 1024, otherwise the generation process would take a ton of time. This would be 512 by 512. And then I would be working with the 512 by 512 image. Yes, the lighting would be better, but I'd be working with a smaller image. And the fact is, you can't just tell users, well, just add paint, because like the easiest thing to do from a user experience point of view is just draw a mask here, or use a mask that you already have. They would not think about painting. They wouldn't even realize that this was the issue. Like the average user wouldn't think twice about where the issue may lie. They would just take a screenshot, post it on Reddit, ask why the picture doesn't look good. That's the user experience like pipeline. That's the process, the train of thought of the average user, which is, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's, you can't just go against that. It doesn't work that way. If you are trying to force a user to do something more that is not, you're not taking the user by their hand and say, okay, you have to do this and that, then no user is going to do that. Maybe like 1% of power users will try to do that and think about that. But yeah, this is the kind of spot we are at with relighting pre-pol and preserving details and color matching. I am quite happy with the preserving details part of it. I am not happy with the color matching part of it. And if I release a workflow for preserving details on people and there's no color matching, I'm gonna have a ton of viewers saying there's a color shift. So I will take my time and see if I want to do that, or I just want to take some time to solve the color matching as well, if it's possible to do so. Okay, so let's close this one and let's open my last thing that I want to show you. For doing this, I need to open my other conf UI So, wait, what? There's no vamp? What? There is definitely a vamp. Okay, yeah. Must have missed something. Okay, it's starting up. Okay, there we go. We are ready. Okay, let's refresh this. There we go. Okay. Any node. Are you ready, chat? Okay, this is a good one. Okay, I'm very excited about this. Okay, what is any node? This any node here is a new node that has been out for like 3 or 4 days. And if you're on Reddit as much as I am, in which case I am sorry for you, you already know about this. You might have seen it. And what it does, it's basically an LLM inside of a node. It can work with remote LLMs such as OpenAI and Gemini. If you're in Europe, only OpenAI, because you can't have access to Gemini APIs. So, and well, maybe you can have them through a third party, but you mostly have access to OpenAI only. But it can also work with local LLMs and MNMs. And in order to do that, what you need to do, which I forgot to do first, it's use Ollama. Ollama is the software environment, not a dev, that is used to employ local LLMs on your systems. Fun fact, I just graduated as a UX designer, so I feel you. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. I mean, I know that I am a terrible user. And that's why I know that most of users are like me. Okay, so in order to use an LLM locally, what you need to do is have 1, good hardware. 2, install Ollama. 3, write in your terminal Ollama serve. Am I already serving a socket? How am I already serving a socket? Am I serving already? Okay, well, let's try. Oh yeah, I am. Okay, good. Sorry. And well, if you didn't, if I weren't serving, what you would need to do was to just write down Ollama serve like this. Then you wouldn't have this issue over here, and then you just write Ollama run, and then you are your LLM of choice, in this case Llama 3, and then you have your own GPT basically in your terminal and on a server socket, which is a local host address. At this point, the AnyNode node, whether you're using it through remote APIs or through a local LLM, would start working. And how would it work? Well, that's kind of easy and difficult to understand at the same time. It starts out as a prompting node. You write a prompt in it, much like you would in a clip text and code node, but like you are talking to a GPT. So you have to explain what's happening and what you want from it. And then the node, once you hit qprompt, would instruct the LLM to solve the issue that you are facing inside of its prompt space and write Python code so that the issue gets solved. And if it all works out, then the output would result in what you were asking for. In this case, let's take this case, which is the easy. Let's get rid of this. This is the easiest one to understand. So what I wanted to do was start from this image. I'm gonna crop it to 512 by 512, and then I am using it as an input inside of the AnyNode. The AnyNode node accepts any kind of node as input. And then I want to output an image. And what kind of image I want to output? It is an image with some sort of manipulation. In this case, I want to isolate the channels, the red, green, and blue channels, and then swap the red and blue channels and combine the red, green, and blue resulting channels back into the image and output the result. So what I'm asking of any node is, I'm telling it that the input is a tensor with 4 dimensions. And then you say, wait, what? This is an image. An image has 2 dimensions, width and length. And I say, yes, an image is a 2D object. But in stable diffusion, it is not an image, it is a tensor. And this kind of tensor in particular has 4 different attributes, sometimes 5. And, well, mostly 4. And they are, if I remember correctly, batch size, which is how many things there are in it. In this case, batch size equals 1. Width, length, which are self-explanatory, and color channel. And yeah, that's why I'm telling it that there's 4 dimensions to it, because it needs to understand that this input is a tensor with 4 dimensions that it's representing a JPEG RGB image. And I want the LLM to take the input and isolate the red, green, and blue channels, and swap the red and blue channels, combine the red, green, and blue channels, and then output the resulting tensor. I can also say output the resulting image, it would work. And so what happens is this. I have swapped the red and blue channels, so I get a different image as far as colors go. So, how's this useful? Well, it is and it is not, in the sense that there's other ways of dealing with most of the stuff that we can do now with this. Like, we can ask it to remove a background, but there's also the remove background node already, or the segment anything node already. So why would we care about that? But what we can do with it is try to write nodes that do not exist. If the issue can be solved with Python code, and the LLM understands how to write that code, and if the LLM doesn't get stuck in a loop, and it's not able to solve the quest it's on, then the missing node is being taken care of, because the LLM has solved that issue. You don't have to be a dev, you don't have to know coding in order to solve that. You can just ask the LLM. Now, if any of you have ever had anything to do with coding with ChatGPT, you know that GPT doesn't know what it's doing. It can output code, it can output working code, but it's also very bad code, and it's, you know, it's very sure that it's working, but sometimes there's missing lines, there's missing definitions here and there. It's just not working. And so what the dev has done, it's this nice thing, which has kind of a counterintuitive implementation to it, which I don't know if there's a way to solve this, but I'm gonna explain it to you and then you tell me if it's counterintuitive to you. So anytime you hit qprompt, the LLM is gonna try to create and run code. If it gets an error, it's gonna display that error in your console log inside of ConfUI. The thing is, what you gotta do is ignore it and hit qprompt again. Because the way it's built is that it's gonna look back at the previous error and the code it's written and then try to fix that. So after enough qprompt iterations, it should be solving itself and spit out some working code. Unless it finds an issue that it's not able to solve. In that case, you're gonna get the same error code over and over and over again. Now, the thing that I was talking to the dev about yesterday, and the actual implementation that he did in like 2 hours, I'm very grateful for that. And if you look in the comments in the code, there's also my nickname, because it was thanking me for the issue that I raised. Was that, let's say I wanted to share a workflow with you where I'm using an AnyNode node. On my machine, it would work because it would have understood what it needed to do. And I know that I'm using a certain version of a certain LLM, but I don't know what kind of LLM a random user on the internet is using. I don't know if the LLM is gonna work out the same solution as my LLM found out. So what the dev did yesterday was implement a way to add a sort of catalog of found solutions that if you're using the same exact prompt, it's going to find and then it's going to use instead of trying to find a new solution. So what I can do is just sheep the working workflow with an AnyNode function in it, and the past solution is going to be shipped alongside the workflow. So yeah, it is quite nice, and yeah, the possibilities. I think the most interesting aspect of this like for example, I am trying right now. So since we don't have a linear light node, right? I was telling you about before, we don't have a linear light node, and we want to have that, but I don't know how to code it. So I am trying to tinker around with any node in order to force it to find a solution to that issue and create me a linear light node. And in the future, like down the roadmap, there's also the solution, the option to export a working solution found by any node and the LLM as a custom node. So you could just export the solution and the Python code as a new custom node that you made yourself, but really it was the LLM all along, and you wouldn't even know how to properly maintain it. But yeah, as long as you're using it, whatever. And yeah, that would be it. Like you have created a new node that can just work, and even if there was no node like that on GitHub. So yeah, I think this is pretty great. I still haven't found a way to solve the linear light blending, for example, but I am experimenting with it since yesterday, and there's a few ways that you can use it. Let's see if I can show you some examples. Manager. I've used the special coding LLM. No, I just used Llama 3, which should know coding. But Mistral and what's its name? Lava should be fine as well. Let's see. Any node. Any node. Let's go over to GitHub. Oh, this is the new one it just did. This is loading this image, and it's using it to create, in its case, is asking for a Sobel mask, but well, it's basically line art, so it's easier for you to understand if you just say line art. And well, it's not line art because it's an inverted Sobel. Yeah, but like at the end of the day, it's basically like line art or canny, like to a normal user point of view. And it also works with video input, and it can also output video as single frames. Then they are put together. So this is pretty great. And yeah, it can do stuff like this. It can extract, like it can. We are just testing it out. Like it can do anything. It's like the node. It's potentially any node. I mean, it's called any node. So yeah, it is great. I don't know what to. The thing is, I don't know if it's a game changer. It's it is potentially a game changer. The thing is, you have to find a way to make it do stuff, and that's the actually hard thing to do. You have to think of ways you could use this that are non-existent yet, and that's hard enough to do because you have to think of things that are not there. Like thinking about things that are there is easy. Thinking about things that are not there is not. And then you have to understand if it's possible to do it with an LLM and coding in Python, and then you have to make it understand what you need for it to do. But I mean, this is no different than actually trying to code with an LLM. Like, it's just inside of a node, and it accepts any input and it spits out any output. Like that's the nice thing about it. It's fully integrated, but it's still pretty stupid because it's an LLM. And like here, it's just transforming the hue and influences the generation because of that. It can do some stuff like but the thing is, the examples right now, they are kind of all over the place because that's what the node does. it does anything. So it's not like I see light and you see one thing and you say, okay, I get that. That's what it does. This one can do whatever. So it's kind of funny. I don't even know how to explain it. But it is so weird. Like, let's try our hand at it. So we have these two images here, and we want to input both of them based on linear light. Let's see what it says. While we do that, let's actually do that. In the first one, we add rotate the resulting image 90 degrees. Okay, so now we have invalid inputs. Please provide a single tensor or two tensors to blend. And the thing is, I have provided two tensors, so why does it think that I haven't? I'm gonna write on both because since it can do anything, I just wanna... Dimensions out of range. Expected to be in range of -3, 2, but got 3. What does it mean? I don't know. Let's say we want to do rotate. Before the combine red, I want to do then rotate the blue channel 90 degrees. That's why I'm saying I don't know if it's a game changer, because you kind of have to understand what. Dimension out of range. I don't know what that is, why that is. Let's do that. Let's change the input. Maybe it's because of that. Dimensions out of range. What does it mean? But what does it mean? But why can't you do it? Let's start afresh with a new any node, because sometimes the node remembers. So what you have to do, because it's an LLM in a box, so it remembers, you have to start from scratch with a new node that doesn't remember. Oh, it's solving this one first. Let's bypass. Oh, now it's solving this one, so bypass this one as well. Oh, it did. I've got linear light now? Chat. I just got linear light out of it. What? Oh my god. I have to save this. Okay. Save workflow. Yeah. Save it, 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 save it. Save it, save it, save it, save it, save it. Linear light. Okay, yeah. Good. We might be closer to an actually perfect frequency separation technique. Thank you, AnyNode. Okay. Okay, let's see what's the issue here instead. Tensors must have the same number of dimensions. Got 5 and 4. How did you get 5 and 4 when there's only one input? Yeah, I know, right? Which is, yeah. I've been trying all day to make it do some linear light thing, and it doesn't, and I just press Q prompt that it does. LLMs, how do they work? That's the thing about having to talk to a gray box. You know, it's just you never know what's going on in there. Okay, so let's try to solve this, because it was working here. So let's see. Come on, you did linear light. I'm sure you can do a rotation. Let's do, maybe it doesn't do rotation, or it doesn't understand rotation. Then flip the blue channel horizontally. Let's see if that works. Come on. I know. Oh, okay. What? Swap the red and blue channels, combine the red and green, output the resulting tensor. Yes. Yes. Swap the green and blue. Gonna take a minute to translate all of that from Korean. Just one sec. Translate. And that's... There are two inputs, so shouldn't we tell them which one to process? No, it should understand that there's only one input, really. And I mean, there are two inputs, but it should take into consideration that only one of the two inputs is available. I mean, I don't have time to have classes as well. Like yesterday, I was doing a 4-hour lesson one-on-one with the owner of a rendering studio here in Milan, and it was exhausting. And also 4 hours is a lot. Going forward, I will do one-on-ones up to 3 hours, but 4 hours is way too much. And output resulting tensor. Okay. What's the issue? Okay, we're swapping the channels without too much of an issue. Let's see, we want to output a resulting tensor with the green channel with strength equals 1. Red channel with strength equals 0.2. And a blue channel with strength equals 0.5. Let's see where that goes. Yes, Andre. Yeah, I translated that. Thank you. Dimensions out of range. Oh, come on. I don't understand what's the issue with dimensions out of range. They shouldn't be out of range. Allora. Oh, sorry, that was Italian. Okay. After the resulting tensor is a green channel with strength equals 1, or a channel with strength equals 0. Okay. Then combine the channel and output the results. Set the... Let's see if this is better. Float object. The error is different now. Float object has no attribute on squeeze. And squeeze. Okay. Let's hit Q prompt again and see if it repairs itself. No. Again, unsqueeze. So what's going on here is that if you go into the terminal, you can actually see the script that it tries to run. And this is the script. So it splits the image into its RGB channels. The red channel has this tensor data, green channel tensor data, B channel tensor data. And then it swaps the channels, which is by doing an unsqueeze function, which I don't know what that is. Again, not a coder. And then it returned the output sensor. And it also combines them through the values that I provided and I've asked for. So the issues lies in the unsqueeze function. So maybe I should ask him not to use the unsqueeze. Do not use the unsqueeze function in the code. I see. Dimensions out of range. We are back. Okay. Let's see if it changes if we hit Q prompt again. Float object has no attribute unsqueeze. Okay. You are getting a bit solipsistic, aren't you? Okay. One thing that you can do instead of creating a new node in order for it to lose memory of what it's doing is that you can just copy the prompt, delete everything, hit Q prompt with an empty prompt field, and then it would wipe the memory clean. And then you can just go again. And the dimensions are out of range again. Okay, let's see what's going on. Let's see we don't want to swap the green and blue channels. Or maybe it's because it's combining them first. Let's see. Yep. Okay, that was the issue. But now it's not combine the channels together and output the results. Let's see this question again. I already have my Korean to English translation. What if the sum of the intensity of a channel becomes 1? Let's see. Now I think it's outputting only the red channel right now, or the green channel. Sorry, the green channel is starting. Red channel with strength 0.5 and blue channel with strength 0.5. Then combine. Let's phrase it another way. Then combine the channels so that the green channel is set at strength equals 0.8, red at 0.5 and blue at 0.2, and output the results. Welcome to the part of the stream where we don't know what we're doing. Okay, so it's outputting only one channel. Because, like, I had another example here. That is, the input is a tensor representing an RGB image. Separate the red, green, and blue channel. I want you to output an image where the red channel is at full strength, while the blue and green channel are at 0.2 strength. So, let's actually go again and do these. I want you to output an image where the red channel, well, the green channel is at full strength, while the blue is at half strength. Strength. So let's see if it works now. It's an interesting topic. Yeah, it is. It's just that... Okay, so this one doesn't wanna do unsqueeze as a... Oh, there we go. It fixed itself. Like, we got this unsqueeze error for how many times? And now it understood how to do it. Magnets, how do they work? LLMs, how do they work? They're just like magnets. And yeah, there we go. We got something out of it that could be done with other nodes. It's just that as long as you make it understand what you're doing and you have a function for it, which would be tedious to do with other kind of nodes, or the nodes aren't there at all, you can just solve it that way. I have 2 times green. Green and blue channels, where the green channel is the first time, where the blue and the green, oh, red. Yeah, they're more like weird, half stupid, half genius children's. It's like they know everything, but they forget they know everything. So yeah, let's see if this linear light one works. Yeah, yeah, it does. Okay, let's input 2 different images and see. Oh, I'm not sure I want to input 2 different images, but let's input this 2. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely. I mean, it's multiplying it by itself, so of course it's working, but patience, Papa. Oh, you know, children. Sometimes you love it, and sometimes you really don't. Let's do it like this. Yeah, it's linear light, all right. Yep, that is. Okay, so now that we have this, oh, I am in the... because I don't have the same custom nodes in this one, so I cannot test it with the previous workflow. So I can't test it yet with the other the frequency separation workflow. But yeah, if this works in the frequency separation workflow, we have solved that as well. So that's great. That is great. Okay, so what's left to say? We saw how to generate stuff based on conditioning, based on random noise maps such as Voronoi and Perlin, and use them as depth maps in order to get more interesting results out of the generations. We saw where we are with relighting faces and people while preserving details, and we can't for the life of us preserve color matching. And we saw some nice things with the AnyNode node. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask your final questions, and I will try to answer them. After that, we'll be off. Any questions in the chat? Oh, thank you for sticking around. I'm always happy to chat about things that I like. So it's always nice. Also, I think I was saying this in another live, but coming from a very closed environment such as fashion photography, like doing some work in the open source field, it is very refreshing. Okay, thank you all. Thank you for your nice words. And yeah, I will be seeing you all on Monday, I guess. I still don't know what the video is going to be about. It's either going to be about AnyNode or it's going to be about relighting and preserving details. Cheers, bye bye, ciao ciao.